All right. Welcome, folks. I'm talking today about adolescent growth and development, and today dealing with students who display poor hygiene. And so I have some handouts for you. I'm going to give those to you and hopefully get those going. You got it. It's only going to cost you another $10. Anyway, the reason I wanted to talk about this subject is because it's one near and dear to my heart. I had two sons who are now grown up, but there were times I walked into their rooms and I'm like, did someone die in here or what? And it strikes me that I hear from staff a lot of times that the kids in the dorms oftentimes have problems with hygiene issues. And as adults, we're like, get up, wash yourself, do what you need to do. But oftentimes, the kids are not really even aware. Sometimes they're not even aware they even smell. It's kind of, you have these needs when you're young, and we expect as parents and adults that somehow they're just going to get that information. And a lot of times they don't. And it's an uncomfortable thing to talk about, to say to someone you need to wash your privates and all those kind of things. And so people let it go by. And I have some information here about the definition of hygiene, but more specifically to that, oftentimes in mental health, we look at hygiene problems, the nurses will call it ADLs, activities of daily living, as an indicator of mental health problems also. People who are depressed, they lay in bed and don't take showers for days at a time. People who are bipolar will oftentimes not even think about showers for weeks at a time. The way I know someone is truly psychotic is the smell. And sometimes when you see someone on the street and they're pushing a shopping cart with unrelated stuff and there's this odor coming from them. In fact, when I was in Philadelphia one time, I was walking down the street downtown and this scent hit me a half block before I even saw the guy. So it's kind of, but you see that with those people that are on the street. In addition, people, particularly young people, will use lack of hygiene as a defense mechanism. That is, particularly for girls who have been sexually abused, it's almost like I'm going to make myself as undesirable as possible by not taking a bath or a shower. So that's not unusual at all. It's again a matter of getting here and deciding, letting them know you're stable, you're safe, you can do these kind of things. And when I give this presentation to staff, house staff, we'll talk a lot more about this kind of stuff. But obviously, it's going to affect your employment. If you go to an employer and you're constantly smelling bad, if you're going to say something to you, eventually HR is going to get involved and on and on and on. But people oftentimes have those habits that are very difficult for them to break. Obviously, there are medical consequences in terms of rashes, infections, and social consequences, obviously. I put something in here about the sweaty, there's a sweaty sock syndrome. I have some interesting pictures here also throughout this thing. But where do we start? How do you get students to start thinking about themselves in a way related to hygiene? And oftentimes we spend a lot of time with them in terms of, let's work on your schoolwork, let's work on your interactions, but literally how you present yourself is very, very important. I remember one time when I was working in Boston, we were interviewing group workers, and a guy came there, and people were interviewing, but he came there and he had a basketball under his arm, he was sweating, and he said, can I interview? And I'm like, no, under no circumstances can you interview. And he said, well, why not? I said, because you're not presenting yourself as someone who's really interested in the job. And so also, I said, go home, shower, come back this afternoon, we'll talk. But it's a bad first impression, and unfortunately I maintained that impression of this guy for the next couple of years. Like, who are you and why do you come to a job interview like this? And so for the kids, I think this should be part of what we're teaching them, how to present themselves appropriately. Usually during adolescence, our puberty and hormones result in new challenges for adolescents, growth spurts, menstruation for girls, voice changes for boys, acne, and so forth in reference to those things, but also people's smelly feet and all kinds of things. But ultimately, there are some people who just really care about smelling good and some don't. Just that simple. As well as adults. There are some people who are orderly and neat, and some people who are just not. The thing that I noticed with my own sons is that I would say to them, go take a shower, and they would be back into the living room in like 3 minutes. I'm like, how is it possible for you to take a shower? Well, they technically took a shower. They went in and the water hit their body and they said, okay, done, and came back out. I'm like, no, go get back in there again. And so, yeah, exactly. And so and it's the same thing here with the young people here. It's almost like you have to say, here's step 1, step 2, step 3. Take care of these things, and then you present yourself. My experience, and maybe it's just me, my experience is that when I take a shower, I feel better. I feel fresher, I feel like I'm going to do something, and I feel ready to go out there and challenge the world.
My mom always told me, Mom, I don't feel good, I don't go to school. Get in the shower and tell me how you feel afterwards.
Yeah.
That was, yeah.
And it's hard to take a nice fresh shower and come out like, oh, I'm so depressed. It doesn't happen. So and that's a relatively cheap way. It's cheaper than medication. And so, so we like to encourage them to do that. So I have information here about showering, about puberty and oral care, and clean clothes. It reminds me of going to college, and the guys I would live with, we lived in a house that had 6 guys, and they were guys. And so they would pick up something out of the pile and smell it and like, it's passable. And they go to school. And I thought, well, the laundromat is a half a block away. But it's almost like until it got like standing up by itself in the corner, it's still usable. It's still fair play. And that's just being guys, I guess, supposedly. I have information here about deodorants and hair. Interestingly, we all have different hair, and the hair type will have something to do and have a lot to do with the type of shampoo that you get. No matter how much they advertise it, some people's hair has more oil content, other people have less. And so you want to make sure that around that. And I also have information around tampons and pads in terms of understanding that girls need to have this knowledge. Whether they teach that, I'm not sure if nursing teaches that or not. And if nursing doesn't, then where are they getting the information from? And I just saw this weekend one of my very, very favorite movies, Carrie. Mm-hmm. And there's a scene in that movie early when the girls are torturing her with tampons and so forth, and she just didn't know. And so it's and I think there are a lot of young people here who may also not know, who've been homeschooled somewhere out in the wilderness, who comes from a parent who may not have told them things. And so we have to be those surrogate parents you always talk about. Okay, I have here, you can't make me. And these photographs are not my family. These are just people I just picked out, but in the internet. Adolescents have to make their own choices, but oftentimes it becomes a power struggle. That even if the kid wants to take a shower, they may not do it anyway because you're a parent and you're asking to do so. And so it's kind of like you're frustrated, the kid's just kind of bouncing along, your blood pressure is going up. And so it's kind of like some strategies in terms of how do you get them to move forward and do the things they need to do. The kids are more interested in the things that they're interested in. There's a young man, I don't know his name, but when I walk in the morning into the medical suite, he's there on and he's there having a relationship with his phone. He's like this. I've never seen his face because it's so close to his machine, and so it's kind of like, and I say good morning, and he's like, it's like it doesn't register, and that's what kids are like. I want to do what I want to do, as opposed to what I need to do. The next photo I has in there, that's just entertaining to me. And so that's why I just thought that was entertaining. I thought, who is this guy? He's in love with himself. So I don't know why I think that, but it's just kind of like, okay, you're beautiful.
Some of those men who have better hair than women.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So anyway, what to do with these kids? In terms of talking to the kids, it's very important to recognize that their perspective about the whole thing is different than yours. We're adults. We've kind of gone through this process already. We think that we're trying to save them some time and some pain, but ultimately they're like, why don't they take a shower? I took a shower last week. I tell you this, I have 1,000 stories. 100 years ago, before any of you were born, I was living in California, and I had a girlfriend there, and she had a son who must have been 11, 12. And it was always a battle to get him to take a bath or a shower. I mean, it was like he'd run away, I'm like, dude, you ran away for 2 hours. You could have taken a shower and been done, but he was just terrible. So I got him to do it, finally got him to do it. And his older brother was like maybe 20. He came home from the service, and he was talking to his older brother, and his older brother said, "How did you get along with James?" He said, "Well, he's okay, but I don't want to talk about this." He said, "No, tell me what's going on." He said, "He says I have to take a shower every single day," and that was his trauma, because literally, I was like, "You're not doing anything until you take the shower." And I guess kids are just different, and the generations are getting a little bit less conscious of that and accepting that from each other. So talking to students, oftentimes students will act out towards you because they don't understand how to make a problem go away or deal with a problem. And I want to put that there for you. Being gentle and empathetic with them, focus on what you can control so they're not using that against you. And ultimately, I ask people to do the most wonderful thing in their life, in the world. And the most wonderful thing in the world is to go to the dollar store. Because what I've noticed, there's a dollar store not that far from me, and it's in the little mini mall. The dollar store's here, and then maybe about 10 stores up is an Albertsons. And I went into Albertsons one day, and I bought some deodorant, some bread, and then I was driving to go out, and I said, "Hey, there's a dollar store." I pulled over, and the same deodorant was $1 that I just paid $3 over here, 10 stores away. Bread was $1 that I paid $4 for. And I think part of what we need to be doing with some of these students here is teaching them. It's almost like, let's take a trip into the community. Let's go to the dollar store. You're gonna save so much money. For $5, you can buy deodorant and soap and all so forth and so forth, as opposed to, it's expensive in regular places. And so getting them to understand that and hopefully, if you took them to the dollar store, then they would make their own choices, as opposed to us yelling at them and say, "Oh, I saw this commercial, I'm going to try this," and then it's their thing, as opposed to us, "I'm doing this because this staff person is being a pain in the butt." Okay.
Super glue for $1 at the dollar store instead of $3.50 at any other store.
The same exact glue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's amazing to me because no one goes to the dollar store. We just go to all these places. I don't get it, but who knows? I've also included this a hygiene chart, and this is really more for the house staff in terms of how to go about doing this with kids and making sure they do this. I want to get them to actually post it somehow, maybe give it to them in some sort of packet when they come here. Like, here you go, this is what you should be doing. This will keep you happy. I have a little presentation in here about special topics, and it's hygiene with people who have autism spectrum disorders. That's a big issue with people who are autistic. Oftentimes, they are not aware of themselves in a lot of ways. In addition, sometimes people who have autism have hypersensitivities to smells, for example. Most soap is perfumed, and deodorants and so forth. And so being aware of their challenges in terms of sensory issues, the sequences that you have to do with them, support in terms of visual things, and role modeling with these people and reinforcing them helps enormously. The worst thing you can do with someone who has autism is just say, okay, well, you're gonna get it, because they've been going for years and years and never get it, unless you take the time. So students will always make their own choices, no matter what. I have a thing for notes there, and there's a picture of the kid there. The only reason I used to include this picture because I thought this kid was cute as he can possibly be. So that's why I said this is too cute.
Yep.
Okay, I'll shut up. Questions or comments that I can answer or address?
So I got a class, my IT class cohorts, not to segregate or anything, but So
Yeah.
how do we encourage them to, because they might fall on the opposite.
And I think that's exactly exactly what you're experiencing. There's no doubt that there's a difference between the healthcare people and the IT people. You have much more, it seems like much more of those autism spectrum disorder people in IT, which goes along with that. I'm doing this. That's for people who are autistic too. However, the healthcare people are more dramatic. And so we get a lot more drama, and oh my goodness, my world's falling apart. My boyfriend and I broke up after 2 days. I've known them, and I don't want to live, and I don't hear that from IT. But ultimately, we to deal with people who are just a lot more autistic and moving towards that thing, and that is very, very fine and defined lines and behaviors. In terms of this is what you do when you get up in the morning, you should do this, that. Here it is on paper. And what I would do with the staff to do in the house, even to come up with a checklist, is Monday through Sunday, and every one of these boxes should be checked. I mean, that's how you deal with those until it becomes routine. And one of the things that's to your advantage is that once you get routine with people with autism spectrum disorder, then they're going to follow it like. It's narrow focus. It's real. No, I got it now. I'm going to be there. And so the worst that, in fact, it's not just because they're stinky, but because actually they need more and more focus that way, in a positive way, as opposed to just being oblivious to the people and the cues around them. And a lot of times they seem to be just that.
Thank you. What's a good way to dress up with adults?
With adults? That's a good question. I'd probably say, you're stinky.
I have to have this conversation with someone, and I've been dragging my feet for a few weeks trying to figure out how to do it.
Yeah. My experience with people is to go straight forward and be, and just say, if this is the person I'm talking to, I'm like, I need to talk to you. This really makes me uncomfortable. That's why I would start with that, because then at some point, eventually the message is going to be, I don't want to make people uncomfortable. And I would start off, this makes me uncomfortable even having this conversation with you. However, there have been a number of times that I've picked up a scent from you, and I'm not sure what's going on, because some people there's a biological reason for it.
Right.
Okay, and so I would, maybe there's a medical issue, whatever, but I think that you need to be aware that this is affecting people around here, and whatever the reason is, whether it's medical or whatever, would you please, try to address that? If I can help you in any way, let me know.
Yeah.
And that's the way I would, and to keep it short and sweet, because they're going to be embarrassed, obviously, and turning bright red. You're going to be embarrassed, turning bright red, and that's why I would start off with, I'm uncomfortable saying this is okay. Can we talk about it or whatever? And now, and I think most people will be receptive. There may be a few people who are like, I'm going to rush right over to HR and they're going to rush right over in HR. But I'm sure the people at HR, as soon as that person sits down, they're going to like, okay,
Yeah.
and also as a supervisor, you can also get a consultation from HR. A lot of times we use HR when something happens, but to me, you do some preemptive stuff and go talk to those people and say, hey, Ms. Todd, what do you think? And she has experience. I'm sure she's dealt with this before.
She worked in the fishing industry.
Okay, so yeah, yeah. So she said no. Yeah, and so I would not feel. I think what staff do a lot of times, we isolate ourselves, we put ourselves on an island. And I've just never done that. I've 1,000 years of experience as a psychologist. I still consult with other people, even though I'm 100% sure of the answer. I still want to hear somebody bounce it off of somebody else, and someone say, "Yeah, doc, that's right," or like, "What in the world are you talking about?" But I'm okay receiving that feedback.
So expect me in your office soon.
I know at a place like I used to work, they keep stuff on hand for employees. That's what we do with personal hygiene.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, just like deodorant, toothbrush.
That makes a lot of sense, just to have it there.
Yeah, and because like a lot of people aren't, like in my experience, haven't been aware that they stink.
Because no one's
But
approached them,
then-
yeah.
And then they'll comment on other people, and you're like, no, dude, that's you. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and a similar conversation that comes up sometimes is people who wear too much
Yeah.
Oh my
scented
goodness.
products.
Yeah, I hear that a lot too.
For me, I have really
Yeah.
sensitive, gives me migraine, stuff like that. So that's another
Yeah.
conversation where the same rules, the
Yeah.
same concepts would apply.
And I've heard that a lot in the work
Yeah.
situations. And I always am concerned, does a person just have an awareness of what is too much? Or are they not taking showers and trying to cover it?
And men don't have as developed sense of smell as women do.
That's true. That's very
So-
true.
You're a smoker too.
Oh yeah.
That's very
Until
true.
you're- yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of an interesting concept. It's like, what do you do with that kind of person? Because there are people who are very sensitive to those smells. I'm very sensitive to that and cigarette smoking and
Oh,
a
yeah.
whole bunch of other stuff too. So, yeah, okay.
So same concept.
My mother told me that if you can smell the cologne on you, then it's too much. You should just get a whiff of it. Just
Spray, delay, walk away. So you spritz in the air, you pause, you walk through the mist. That's all you should do.
spray, delay, walk away. Okay, that works. Okay. Other questions or comments? Okay, thank you all very much for attending. I'm not sure what we're doing next month, but it'll be something interesting.
It always is. You can do this Thursday for the.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, excellent. Thank you.
All right.